how much would it cost?
As in real time, I've been able to evacuate, and they set a recent peak of about 4,800 megawatts. And we have reason to believe through stress testing models that we can do upwards of 5,400, perhaps 5,450, with no additions to the system. We further believe that we can get to 6,000 with adjustments that would be very cost effective, but somewhat a bit more challenging to implement because they do involve the discos. But the one thing that we would like to see are capacitor banks installed at the disco feeder points at certain of them. And if we could do that, as well as put variable harmonic filters in at the major customers of the discos, that would be probably the steel plants and cement plants, because they create reverberation in the system, if you like, and they have the I was going to say capacity, but let me use the word notion, to destroy the workings of the capacitor banks. And so they don't necessarily add to the system, but they add to the longevity and the return and the benefit for all customers in terms of the system. So that needs to be looked at. So if we did those two things, and they could be done fairly quickly, we could get to 6,000 fairly easily. In terms of that, which segues into the expansion plan, our long-term expansion plan, as I mentioned in my presentation that we put together, we have a plan that's extremely detailed to deliver or to build 20,000 megawatts of evacuation capacity by the year 2020, and it's in a stepped manner each year. And then in terms of the funding of that, that funding would be done for the most part by external institutions, and the debt I would expect would be carried on TCN's books. Now, the difficulty we're having is attracting funding, and so we've looked at any number of different options. The build, own, operate, for example, public-private relationships, partnerships, for example, and so on, and any variations of those where we can bring the investor into the system. And for the most part, what we're having the most difficulty with is to demonstrate that we have the financial integrity for them to really trust in investing in our system, and that's why they want to go forward without the sovereign guarantee. I don't always want to have to go to the Ministry of Finance and plead for the sovereign guarantee if we can make it work. So I have been, or we, I should say perhaps, have been looking at creative ways to overcome that, and one might be if we have a significant piece of line that we were going to build that involved a transformer and it was a substantial sum of naira, and that would be perhaps in dollar terms, it could be $500 to $1 million or something. We would separate that piece of line and then have the tariff identified for that piece of line and have the tariff flow directly, have the tariff approved by NERC and flow directly from the market fund to that investor. And if it did that, the only risk that the investor would be concerned about would be to make sure that the tariff is in place and that it's enforced. And they would not then have to worry about the liquidity of TCN. So we still get to the same place if we put all the restrictions and regulations and code and so on in place. So I'm just looking for creative ways that we can get that money, because in terms of quantum, which was the other question, is to get to 20,000 megawatts by the year 2020 on an approximate basis is going to take about $1 billion USD per year over that period of time, or a bit more. So it's a substantial amount of money, and it's going to be difficult to raise it, but I see the generations on the move, and I don't think we have a lot of choice. The only choice we have is to figure out how we're going to do it, not if we're going to do it. Thank you.
Okay. I'm doing good for start. Going forward, what strategy and plans have you executed to enhance transmission network?
Yes, sir, because it's very integral to our system. Reliability of evacuation of power is as important as the quantum. I can say, sir, that if we go back to 2013, we had 22 system collapses that year. And at that time, system collapses were about 2.5 hours per collapse. So you can imagine the impact on the system. It was significant, and many complaints followed as a result. In 2014, we reduced from 22 system collapses down to 9 system collapses. And in the current year, in 2015, we're down to 5. I believe it might have gone up to 6 because we just...
that is 5, including...
Okay, so it's five sum total for 2015. And the duration of the system collapses is down to about a half an hour. In terms of preventive maintenance in that respect, the job is to really survey all of the 15,000 kilometers of line, for example, to make sure that we do this line tracing that we're talking about. We need to make sure that not only that the right-of-ways are clear of all of the untoward that can grow into the lines and so on, but we also have to make sure that all of the insulators that we carry on the poles, because we've inherited an aging infrastructure, that they're still sound, because over time they do deteriorate. So we're checking all of those. We could, I would like to say we could do even better job at it if we had a bit more funding, because the right way to do it, I thought I heard the word this morning, helicopter. In the days past when it was NEPA and so on, PHCN, they did have helicopters at that time. And so the helicopters that were in place at that time have since been abandoned, and they'll never fly again. But I think it's appropriate that we do have helicopters. And when you have helicopters, then you can do site surveys very quickly, very efficiently, very fast. And that's the way that we want to get to. That's where we want to get to in running the business. So we in TCN at the senior level keep looking at that, because we're trying to adopt best practices in terms of bringing this company into the future, so into the present for that matter. So that's the way that you do that. You improve the mechanisms that are used to transport the power. As I say, you want to make sure that the transformers are, the oil, all those types of things all need to be maintained so that they don't go down. All the lines need to be maintained. So the engineers have a very extensive program that they walk through on a regular quarterly basis and make sure. And so I think the results are showing that we are getting some progress and benefit there.
And you use under frequency relay mostly to drop some load when the generation is not stable. But the problem is that the two blocks relays mostly on the 3 kbps, and the control will not be efficient, and that is why you're holding very high system collapse, because if it's at 3 kb, 4 at 3 kb, you add up to from maybe that either in the house when the system is stable. But why not try to put it on the 132 kV line so that the control will be very, very much effective and efficient load will give up on the line, avoid unnecessary downtime, because it took some time, 2 to 3 hours before the generation to start to pick up, so now the system will recover. So I would advise that maybe you use the 132 lines that are heavy load so that you can use it under frequency relay. That will only come up when the frequency of the system is a little bit down, maybe between 49.5, I mean 49 to 49.5 along the system. That is number one. The second question has to do with the issue of your performances. I don't know in brief whether you can tell us, since you took over as CEO, what are the capacity improvements that you have recorded that have to do with transmission line? And what you met in ground and improve the transmission capacity.
I'll pick up a bit, and then I'm going to ask my colleague on my left, the Managing Director of System Operations, to assist. We have done much in terms of capacity in the lines. Well, when 2013, 2012, the capacity of the system was approximately 2,500 megawatts, and as I said, we've hit and demonstrated that we can deliver 4,800 megawatts. So we've substantially increased the capacity of the system, and that's been through any number of projects we can expand on them in more detail if you wish. The other thing that I think is important to point out are the losses that we have on the system. The losses used to be in the range of 12% or more, and we have done substantial work in that area, and we now have the losses reduced down to 8% and even less than 8%. And what's important about reducing the losses to 8% is it means that we're running the system more efficiently. So with the same amount of infrastructure that we have in place, if we can get that power evacuated from point A to point B and only have 8% losses or 7% losses, that means that there are more kilowatt hours at the other end. We reach the peak on the kilowatt hours as well on the energy side, up to 106,000 megawatt hours, and that's an all-time peak for us. So the efficiency has been achieved through the reduction in losses and improvement in the quality of the system that we have that we're using to evacuate power. And that translates to millions of dollars in terms of benefits. So perhaps I'll just ask you.
Oath. I need to take oath.
Okay. You need to take oath. Then when market is still not mature. What is the remittance ratio? Based on what you just said now.
There was an extensive debate and consultation process as to when it was the right time to declare TEM in the Nigerian electricity supply industry. We kept postponing when TEM would be declared, and we noticed that if TEM wasn't declared, there was going to be continuous shortfall.
Excuse me, who kept? Who?
NEC had the responsibility of declaring TEM, but NEC operates.
Just say you kept postponing.
Yeah.
We.
Okay.
Okay,
NEC, yes, NEC. But NEC does it in consultation with the market. Yeah. It was on that basis that NEC. Now, we are already indicated that payments have not been good, and not all the participants were ready. We came up with a TEM order and a TEM supplementary order that tried to address all given situations, like including situations for NIPP projects that were not privatized and had not also had a valid PPA. So we came up with a TEM order, the supplementary order that took care of all the given situations so that the market could move forward. And then we also took care of the situation where some of the market participants had not posted their essays from the discourse, and we decided that we were going to escrow their own accounts. Now, under the current payment methodology, payment is made to energy charges goes to.
And your summation from what you heard from them.
All right. First of all, what's the general assessment of the discos and their performance, the provision of electricity since the new operators took over? I would want to say that before the advent of the present administration.
Sorry, you have to make it very concise. You don't have a lot of time.
Okay. Yes. So before the advent of the present administration, and of course the discos took over 2013, we expect that based on the agreements they had signed, that they were supposed to make considerable investment to reduce the technical and commercial, losses, and this was supposed to be the agreement of their investment. And from what we've seen and we're hearing, it's like they have done some work, but I wouldn't say that they have done it to the point that Nigerians would want to say it's Uhuru yet. It's a long-term investment, but I think at the end of the submissions of a disco, we'll be able to know if what they've invested vis-a-vis what they're expecting, because they're businessmen. They have to invest and get returns. But Nigerians to expect some level of service for that money they're paying, and for, of course, government selling its assets to the new operators. So the new operators have to show capacity. They have to show capacity to give this service to Nigerians. They have to show capacity of having clean financial ability to be able to really run this process of giving service. So I would say, I would not want to be conclusive by saying that they've not done well so far, but from the advent of this administration, everybody is saying that there's been better generation because the issues of gas pipelines being broken is reduced, and other human issues that were really bringing about such losses that brought the generation down and all that. So I think all things being equal, Nigerians we will be able to say when they finish their submissions whether they have done properly or not.
I'm asking vis-a-vis the increase of tariff they've been
Okay, you mean
asking.
the agitation?
Yeah, they've been agitating for increase of tariff vis-a-vis their own service delivery.
I think also we're sitting as judges. We're hearing we're listening to the presentations from all players. The disco themselves have not made their presentation, so I think it would be premature to say whether they really it's really worth approving this tariff for them to charge Nigerians more for the services they will give. But we would look at all the indices which NEC had put in place, the National Electricity Regulatory Commission put in place, vis-a-vis the demands of what the discos are looking for. And also we'll look at the investments, because it is a critical condition for asking for increment. You must have done some level of investment. We'll look at this and then we'll come up with a position to say, okay, we have looked at it. And of course, as they said today, Nigerians will be properly engaged. We will not allow an arbitrary increment of tariffs without proper engagement of Nigerians. They need to explain to Nigerians what they've done, what they are yet to do, and what are the concrete terms of agreement all the parties will go into to say, if we agree as Nigerians to pay this extra, what are we getting in return? This must be put down and agreed upon.